Hello guys, this is Paul McWhorter with TopTechBoy.com, and we're here today with episode number 18 in our incredible new tutorial series where you're going to learn artificial intelligence or you're going to die trying. What I'm going to need you to do is pour yourself a nice tall cup of ice cold coffee. That would be straight up black coffee poured over ice. No sugar, no sweeteners, none needed. And as you're getting out your coffee, as always, I want to give a shout out to you guys who are helping me out over at Patreon. It is your support and your encouragement that keeps this great content coming. You guys that are not helping out yet, take a look down in the description. There is a link over to my Patreon account. Think about hopping on over there and hooking a brother up. But enough of this shameless self-promotion. Let's jump in and let's talk about what I am going to teach you today. And what I'm going to teach you is some really cool and some really exciting stuff. And what I'm going to show you how to do is how to do hand detection and pose estimation. And what do I mean by pose estimation? Not only do you find the hands, but you find the location of every little knuckle and every little joint of your hand so that you can not only know where the hand is, but what the hand is doing. This opens up some really exciting possibilities that you can start doing gesture-based computing where your webcam is watching you and decides to do certain things on your computer based on what your hand is doing. Pretty neat, pretty cool, right? Now, to be honest with you, this is something that I could have taught you in lesson number 1. But if I would have done this in lesson number 1, you would have just been copying and pasting what I was doing. You would have never understood it. I spent 18 lessons, or the first 17 lessons, that was 34 videos with the homework solutions, 34 videos to get you to the point today that when I teach you this, you will actually understand it. You will understand Python array and data structures. You will understand OpenCV. You will understand how to treat an image from a camera as nothing more than a data set that you can analyze and you can manipulate. And because we have laid the foundation, you're going to be able to not only understand what I'm going to teach you today, you're going to be able to take it out and do projects on your own, do some really exciting stuff on your own. But enough of this introductory banter. Let's jump in and let's get ready to learn some new stuff. So what I will need you to do is open up the most excellent Visual Studio Code. And what we're going to do is we're going to come over here, and I had better get out of your way before you get very, very angry with me. We're going to come to our Python working folder. We are going to say add a new file, and this is going to be OpenCV-28, I do believe, .py, and the .py is kind of important. We're going to hit enter, and boom, a fresh new Python program just waiting to be written. All right, what we're going to do now is we don't want to start from scratch. We want to start from our standard program that launches the webcam. So I will need you to go to the most excellent www.toptechboy.com, come down to this happy little search bar, and what I need you to search on is faster launch, and with a little luck, we should have this come up. Faster launch of webcam, and so that is what I indeed want, and here it is. We are going to come down here and we're going to grab this little bit of code by clicking on these 2 page icons. Selects the text, right mouse click copy, you snagged it, you come over here and you paste. And hey guys, I got a new camera, and this camera runs really fast without competing with Wirecast, my studio software. So now my camera stuff and my OpenCV stuff are working much quicker. They're running much faster now because this camera isn't bogging everything down. But there is one little thing about this camera that I am going to have to make an adjustment. First of all here, that you know that if you have a webcam, you're probably on camera 0 or camera 1. I believe this new camera is camera 4 for me. You don't have to worry about that. Just make it whatever works for you. And then the other little thing is that for this camera, as much as I love it, it does not take these cam set commands. And so I need to resize my frame right after I read it. And so I just need to do a frame is equal to cv2.resize. Why am I showing you this? So if you see it in my code, you know what it is for, a frame. And then what I want to go is I want to resize it as width and height, like that. So here I got to read it in big, but then I immediately make it the size that I want, which we could say here is 1280 by 720. Let's run this thing just to make sure that we haven't broken anything in the first 3 minutes of the lesson. So let's run it and see if this thing is going to work. Boom. Beautiful view of the top of my green screen and my ceiling. And why did I put it up there? So that I can give you hand gestures, and they will all be appropriate hand gestures, okay? And so have a little sip of coffee. Very happy. Do you see how clear that is? And do you see how it runs really fast without bogging down my studio software? So I'm glad I've got that working better now. Okay, so now we are ready to start doing hand detection and pose estimation. All right, we're ready to do hand detection and pose estimation. So what we need to do is we need to install a library. Now, you guys that have been following along in this class, taking this class, it's going to make a lot of sense, and all you got to do is do what I do. If you're one of these drive-by shooters that just came into the middle of the class and landed on this lesson, what you have to know is that I am operating on Python version 3.6.6. I'm in OpenCV version 4.5.3, and I'm about to install Mediapipe. Now, I'm going to do it in the virtual environment that we're working on in this class, in our AI virtual environment. We're going to install it in that virtual environment. If you're just hopping in here from somewhere else, you just need to make sure that you install this in whatever your working Python environment is. Okay, so I think that you can follow along. If you want to understand what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, look in my AI playlist, my AI for Everyone playlist. I believe it's lesson number 3. I explain about virtual environments. Okay, but what you know in these virtual environments is we are operating in the virtual environment. You can see it down here, the Pi AI 3.6. This Pi AI 3.6 is the virtual environment that we're working in. Well, if we want to install a library in that virtual environment, we better activate it. So I'm going to come down here, and let's see, you probably cannot see that. There, I think you can see that. So what I'm going to do is I'm in my Python working folder here, and then what I am going to do is I'm going to activate that virtual environment. So it is Pi AI 3.6/scripts with an uppercase S and then an activate. And just to show you, right, we got our Python main working folder, and then we have this Pi AI 3.6 virtual environment. And then what I am going to do is I am going to activate that, and boom, Pi AI 3.6. We are in our virtual environment. And just to make sure, I'm going to type Python. It should come back Python 3.6.6. Very good, it did. And so let's just see, if I say import Mediapipe, I get an error. It's not found. Why? Because we hadn't installed it. Okay, so now that is what we are going to do. And so we are going to do our old friend pip install, and we're going to install Mediapipe. Mediapipe. Can you see that? And now we're going to hit return, and we're going to hope that it finds something. Collecting Mediapipe, so far so good. We'd like to see the happy little things start dancing around in front of us here. We get a little nervous when it just sits there appearing to not do anything, but we will remain calm. So far, no error, no problem. Yours is probably going to go a little faster than mine. Ah, there it goes. Okay, so it looks like we are starting a download. That, my friend, is a very good sign. It's probably going to take about 2 minutes to download and install this. Yours might very well go faster because while I have a very, very fast computer, my internet connection leaves a little bit to be desired sometimes. So it might take me a little bit longer than you, but we will just sit here and visit for a few minutes while this thing downloads and installs. And what this is this is the library that we will use inside of OpenCV to be able to find the hand and then to identify all the little locations on the hand, where the tip of your pinky finger is, where your thumb joins the palm, all of that sort of stuff. And boom, we just got a successful install. I always like to start, just to make sure for good measure, I'll type Python and then I'll say import Mediapipe. Before I go on, I want to make sure, boom, no errors. And so we should be good to go there. And then I don't need to sit inside of this virtual environment, so I will deactivate it. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to come up here to our program that launches the webcam, and after importing our old friend CV2, we're going to import our new friend Mediapipe. And because I don't want to sit here all afternoon typing Mediapipe, we will import Mediapipe as MP. And so I can reference the Mediapipe library by simply referencing MP. Okay, now there's going to be two objects that we need to create. We need to create an object that does the hand detection and the hand analysis. I'm going to call that object hands, hands plural. Why? Because I might have two hands in the picture. I might have more than one hands in the picture. So this object is going to be associated with some number of hands. And so hands is going to be MP for our Mediapipe. It's going to reference that library. And then in that library, it is going to reference solutions. And then little hands. This little hands is completely different than this little hands. This little hands on the left, I could have called it a kitty litter box or whatever I wanted to. But this hands with the little h, that references very specific methods inside of the mp.solutions library, okay? And so we're going to call our object hands mp.solutions.hands. Okay, lost my hands. Okay, mp.solution.hands. Wait for it. Hands with an uppercase H. Do you think they could have made it a little more confusing? Probably not, but there's a solution.hands with the lower h and .hands with the upper H. Okay, now we got to give it some parameters. The first thing is we got to tell it whether we are dealing with a still image, because if we're just going in and analyzing a still image, it looks carefully, it does everything very organized and in a certain very quick way, or a very in-depth way, because it's just a single image. But if it's not a static image, we need to tell it false. It is not a static image. Well, we are going to be working on the webcam, so it's not going to be a static image. So is static image? No, false. It's not. Okay, then what is the maximum number of hands it should look at? Well, I don't mean to be parochial, but I am a two-handed individual, so I'm going to look for two hands. You guys out there that are maybe three-handed individuals, you're going to have to figure out how to handle that. But I am doing this lesson for the two-handed individuals, okay? So I'm going to say I will look for two hands. And the reason I'm not looking for four is not only do I not have four hands, but I'm not concerned about like having a group of people and finding all the hands. I'm thinking like I'm in front of the computer and I want to do some sort of hand gestures to make the computer do things. So I'm thinking in terms of gestures. So I'm only going to be looking for two hands. And then you got to kind of tell it how confident do you need to be in the tracking. Well, I'll just say 0.5. And then how confident do you need to be in the tracking? I'll say 0.5. I played around with those two numbers and it doesn't seem like it's really worth fooling with, so I just use the default of 0.5 and 0.5. If anybody can tell me why when I hit a point it gives me a double point, well, of course it didn't do it that time, but it seems like this autofill for some reason is giving me 2 points when I type in 1 point, and that is getting most annoying. One of you smart guys out there, tell me how to make that stop. Okay, I've got this hands object that will look at a frame and find and analyze the hands. Now, I might want to draw those hands or draw that data or plot that data, so I'm going to create a draw object, MP draw. You can call this whatever you want. I call it MP draw. And then that is going to be mp.solutions, just like above, mp.solutions. But then what I'm going to call it, there is that double thing. Do you see that? Why does it make me think? I swear that thing is giving me doubles. Okay. mp.solutions.drawing utils. Drawing utils. Okay, you guys I hope can see that. Should I make it a little bigger? Okay, maybe that'll help you a little bit. See what I'm doing a little better. Okay, so I'm going to do a drawing object called mp.solutions.drawingUtility. So if I want to analyze a frame for hands, I use the hands object. If I want to annotate my frame with the data, I use the mp draw object. Okay, I think that should make pretty good sense. And so you're going to probably be surprised how easy this is going to be. But the first thing is I read the frame and I resize it. Okay, that makes sense, right? You understand why I had to resize it. You don't have to resize it. Now, OpenCV, when it grabs that frame, it works in what? Blue, green, red, BGR. The rest of the known universe operates in what? RGB, including Mediapipe. So what do we better do? We better create a new version of frame, which is BGR, and that is going to be equal to CV2, CV2.CVT color, and then what do we want to change the color of? We want to change the color of frame. Okay, and then what do we want to, man, this is really getting annoying. We want to change the color of frame, and how do we want to do it? CV2.color underscore, we want to go BGR to RGB, like that. Okay, so now we got a frame BGR, or I shouldn't call that BGR, should I? That is frame RGB. Frame RGB is the RGB version of the frame that we just read in. Okay, now what do we want to do? We want to analyze that. So we want to get some results. You could call this pumpkin patch if you want to, but I'm going to call it results because it's what's going to come back from this hands object that I created. So what am I going to do? I am going to call the hands object, and then what I want to do is I want to process, and what do I want to process? Frame what? Frame RGB. Okay, and so this then should go out and analyze it. This won't do anything. I just want to make sure I can run it without the thing dying. Okay, so it launched the camera. I can wave at the camera. It's doing analysis, but that's all it's doing. It's just returning it into results, and we haven't really looked at results. Well, the first thing we need to do is say, did we get a result? Because if we don't get a result, it's just going to return like an empty array. So is there a result? And so like when I first ran it, there was no hand in there, so there would be no results. Well, you don't want to go further if you don't have a result. So if you say if, you're going to say if results, and what part of results will be multi-hand landmarks. Okay, now I got to tell you, results isn't like a simple array or something like that. It is a very, very complicated data structure, and it's very, very hard to understand. And therefore, what we're going to be spending time on today is trying to break that apart. But the one thing is that those arrays of hand positions and the positions of all the parts of your hands, those come back in the results object, and they are inside of results.multi-hand landmark. Now you're going to have multiple hands, so you would have all the landmarks for this hand and you would have all the landmarks for this hand. But to begin with, we're just getting all of that data in results.multi-hand landmarks. Now, if results.multi-hand landmark is not equal to none, so if it is equal to none, there are no results, you didn't find a hand, don't do anything, go get another frame. Okay, but if it's not equal to none, that means there's something there. You found a hand, or you found multiple hands, so then you want to jump in and you want to start analyzing that. Okay, you want to start analyzing that. Now, what you have to see in this results.multi-hand landmarks, if there's more than one hand, you're going to have more than one array of data. So again, this is going to be kind of like that concept of an array of arrays. Each hand is going to have an array. So what do we want to do with that? We want to step through it. So I'm going to say for hand landmarks in what? Results.multi-hand landmarks. I hope that's right. Okay, now does that make sense? This results.multi-hand landmarks could have multiple hands. It could have multiple sets of landmarks. And what do I mean by landmarks? I guess I should stop and show you. This is what it actually returns. This is kind of a picture of what it returns. It looks at your hand. Is that the right way? I hope it's the right way. It looks at the hand and it divides your hand into 21 different points. The position of your wrist is 0.0. The position of where your thumb, no, I think it's actually the bottom part of your thumb that is inside of your palm, that's 0.1. And then where your thumb comes out of your palm, that's 2. And then this joint is 3 and the tip is 4. So you kind of have 5 points from the wrist up to the tip of the thumb, and then each finger sort of has 4 different points on it. And so if you take the wrist and then 5 times 4, you end up with 21 points to define sort of what your hand is doing. And I hope that makes sense. And they're sort of indexed in this way from 0 to 20. 20 is your pinky tip. Okay, 20 is your pinky tip. And that is kind of how they're indexed. Now, you don't have to worry about these names like thumb underscore tip or index underscore finger underscore MCT. You just got to kind of keep this data. You've got to kind of keep this data picture handy. And then you have to know that it returns the data in this order. So the first set of data is going to be for this position, the second is going to be for here, third, fourth, fifth, and so forth. So you got to know the data is in order, and then if you have this picture, you have no problems at all. So now there could be multiple hands, and so we're going to step through the multiple hands. All right, multiple hands would be results.multi-hand landmarks, and then when we step through it one hand at a time, that is going to be hand landmarks. Why is it plural? Because one hand has 21 data points in it, so there are landmarks on the hand. So the hand is singular now, and landmarks is plural because there's 21 points. This probably, like if I would have done it, I probably would have called this, let me come back over here. I probably would have called this, multi underscore hands plural. That's what I would have called it, because this has multiple hands, and then the hand landmarks is one hand, the 21 points associated with that one hand. I don't mean to get stuck on this, but man, this is a really complicated data set. I'm trying to kind of show you how we're going to bust into it to do something useful. So we are going to step through the hands one hand at a time, and that is what we are doing here. Okay, so now what are we going to do? As we step through the hands, what do we want to do? We want to draw them. So we are going to MP draw dot what? We want to draw underscore landmarks. And then where do we want to draw them? We want to draw them on frame. We just use frame RGB to do the analysis, but when we do the annotation, when we do the drawing, we want to put it on our original picture because that is where we are going to, that is what we are going to display. And so we want to draw it on frame. And what do we want it to put on it? Hand, landmarks. And so it's the singular. So this step is going to draw the hand. Now, if you have multiple hands, as you go through this loop, it's going to draw this hand, draw this hand, draw this. It's going to put all the hands on there, but we draw them one hand at a time. So that's hand landmarks. Okay, does that make sense? If this doesn't, go back and watch it again. And I know I'm repeating myself, but I want you to understand this data structure. Okay, so now here we draw the hand landmarks. Okay. So now, I think if we run this, it might just work. Okay, hold your breath. Good news, it ran, it didn't crash. Now, if I put my hand up there, what's going to happen? Boom! Look at that. Okay, it put a point. It put a point at each one of those, right? The wrist, where the thumb joint, the thumb joint inside the palm, okay, where the thumb comes out of the palm, the thumb joint and the thumb tip, all the way out to that data point number 20, which is the tip of the pinky, right? Now let's look at this, okay? Two hands, boom, we can analyze two hands. Now, if I did have a third hand, which I don't, but if I did have a third hand and put it up there, it wouldn't show it because I just said to show just two hands. We could make it for more hands, but I did it just for two. Okay, boom. So there we are. Let's do one other thing that's kind of neat here. What we can also do is if we want it to be a little bit more obvious when we do the draw, we can come in and we can add to it mp.solutions. And can you guys see that? mp.solutions, you can almost. Okay, there you certainly can. mp.solutions, okay, and then mp.solution dot hands, plural, dot hand, uppercase, singular, hand connections. Hand connections. Let me make sure you can see that. Yeah, you can see that. So we're going to add to the hand landmarks, which were the little red dots, we're going to add MP solutions, dot hands, and then the hand connections. Okay, and I think this is pretty neat. Boom. Look at that. Okay, so you see now we've got like a little wireframe. We have a little wireframe of our hands. And that is really starting to annoy me. Let's see if I can. Okay. There, that gives me a little more space. Look at that. So you see we have these little wireframe hands. That is pretty cool. Okay, so let's talk about the good news and let's talk about the bad news. What's the good news is? The good news here in probably about 15-20 minutes, I have you where you are doing you're finding the hands and you're doing pose estimation. That is the good news. What is the bad news? The bad news is really all you have done is run one library that somebody else wrote and then take the output of that library and pass it to another library that someone else wrote. and you're kind of like taking the output from A and feeding it to B, and that's all you're doing, and you really don't have a clue what you're doing, and you really don't have a clue how this thing works. And so, yeah, you can impress your friends by showing them your pose estimation and, wow, look at this program I wrote. But then if you have all these ideas of things you could do, you can't go do those things because you really don't understand the data structure, because we caught the results data coming from our hands object. We caught it, and then we passed it to MP draw, and we didn't even bust it open. And the problem is, the bad news is it is a very, very complicated data structure that is very, very poorly documented, and it's kind of like this really delicious nut that is inside of this really, really hard shell, and it is hard to bust that shell open and get that juicy, delicious little nut out. Well, that is what we are going to do now. I'm going to show you how to get that delicious nut out of that hard, ugly shell. And if you watch me, you will understand that, and you will be able to go out and code on your own, and you will be able to do things on your own, and you will be able to do things like gesture-based computing and all of that, because I am not going to stop here just by having you do the cool demo. I'm going to teach you how that data structure actually works. Does that sound pretty neat? Okay, I hope it does. Time for a little swig of coffee. So what we need to do is we need to see if we can just go in and try to kind of bust into that nut and see what's happening. Well, what's the first thing that we got? The first thing that we got was results. So what would be the obvious thing? Let's just see if we can print results like that. What if can we look at that, and do we see some arrays or some things that we could kind of figure out what's where? So let's just print results. We will come up here, we will run it. Okay, and the good news is it didn't crash, but the bad news is you can see that what that results is, it seems to be some sort of like class object, and it's not like a simple thing of like an array of arrays or some simple data structure that you could then go in and start trying to look at that, go in and grab the data out of. But at least we can kind of see that it was a class that it returned. Well, what we saw is that we were able to step through results. So there's got to be kind of like a chunk of something and a chunk of something and a chunk of something, and we can step through those chunks. And so if the whole thing didn't make sense, can we just look at a chunk? Well, what is the chunk? It is print hand landmarks. That is what we get. This is getting annoying. What is this doing? Hand landmarks, like that. Print hand landmarks. So what I want is, instead of printing out the whole results, what I want to print out is I want to print out the chunk, the hand landmarks chunk. And let's look at that and see if it starts looking more like data. Okay, here all we're seeing is just that media-based solutions, but there's no hand, and because there's no hand, it would never get in that if statement, so it would never print out data. But let's give it a hand. Boom, look at that. Seems like data is coming out. So let's look at that data. Okay, look at that. So what it looks like is you've got some sort of kind of like data structure. And probably what these are is these are for the 20 landmarks, and this last one would be like number 20, which is the 21st. Really, starting with 0, there's 21, but this would be like the index of 20 or the 21st element, and it's giving us what looks like the X position on the on the frame, and the Y position on the frame. And it actually looks like it's actually giving a Z. Maybe it's looking at how big that hand is and figuring out like how close or how far from the camera it is. But we really don't care about Z. We really don't care about Z. What we care about is X and Y. Now, if we look at these X and Y values, one of the things you'll see is they're between 0 and 1. And so probably like for X, 0 would be all the way to the left of the frame, and 1 would be all the way to the right of the frame. So it's probably a 0 to 1 full scale on the frame. And same thing from Y. 0 would be the top, and 1 would be the bottom of the frame. And so it's sort of like normalized to 1. So if we're going to make it useful in a minute, we're going to have to like unnormalize it from 1. But you see, the problem is we see all the data there, but we got to kind of bust it down, and we've got to kind of see what we really want is we want to know kind of like what would we like to have. We would like to have an array, and then what we would like to have in that array, is 20 data points, or 21 data points, 21 tuples of the X value and the Y value of my wrist, and then the X and Y value of where my thumb moves inside my palm, and then the X and Y value of where my thumb comes out of my palm, and then the XY value of the joint of my thumb, and the XY value of the tip of my thumb in tuples. And so kind of just like if I was to show you that, what I would sort of like is I would like to have something that is an array, okay, and inside the array are data points of like the x0 comma y0 as a tuple, and then the next one would be the x1 comma y1, and then comma, and then on down the line. And then I would have a little data packet that would have all the information about my hand, and that would correspond to this, that if you look at like this position 4 here, that position 4 has an X and Y value of that point, that end of my thumb. I hope that makes sense. So let's just jump back in here, and then let me get rid of this, and then let's see how we can try to break this down further to start pulling actual X and Y values out of this that we can use. Well, you can see that it seems to say this is landmark, this is landmark, this is landmark. And so what I'm kind of hoping is, if I come here, that I go all the way inside here. And what I would like to be able to do is, I would like to see now if this hand landmarks steps through the hands in the picture. But the hand landmarks, which is what we printed, it has a whole bunch of data in it. Well, I wonder, and now I'm going to take this print out, I'm wondering if I can step through, the what? Step through the landmarks on a hand. So here I'm stepping through the hands, but now I want to see if I can step through for, what am I going to call this? I'm going to step through the landmark. I'll call it singular. I'm going to step through the landmark in results dot multi hand underscore. Let's see, do I really want to do that? No. Okay. Landmark is going to step through hand landmarks. Okay. So right, I've got the hand landmarks as the one hand. Now I want to step through the individual landmark in hand landmarks dot landmark. Okay. And that's telling it to take this whole array of all 21 landmarks and one by one step through landmark. And so this landmark, that is what I am putting here. This one, I could call it whatever I wanted to, and I called it landmark upper L. Does that make sense? So now that I have the data on the one hand, I am going to step through the landmarks, and then I need to somehow, let's just see if we can print them. Okay, so now what do I want to print? I'm going to print an XY tuple. And then look at this. It seems like just like we could go dot landmark, we could probably go dot landmark dot X and dot Y. And so what I could do here is landmark dot X, comma, landmark dot Y. Why do I keep repeating myself so much? Because I want you to understand it and not just do what I'm doing. Landmarks is all the data associated with one hand. Multi-hand landmarks is all the hands. I go out and I grab them one hand at a time in hand landmarks, and now all of those hand landmarks, I want to step through them one at a time, and then I want to grab the dot X and the dot Y, the dot X and the dot Y, and I want to print them out, okay? And then what I want to do after that, I just want to print a blank line just so I can kind of see. I just want to print like that outside the for loop. And what's that going to do? That's just going to, it should print out 20 XY values associated, or 21 XY values associated with all those points on my hand, and then it should print a blank line. So let's see if that'll work. Now initially it shouldn't do anything because it shouldn't see a hand, all right? And I need to get this all the way down here. Okay, that looks good. Let me call the window back up. Okay, so it's just saying that class that it's printing results. And now let's see. Boom, look at that. Okay, so I quit, and you can see that these are XY tuples, okay, and I should have like 21 of them in a group, and then you should have another 21 in a group and another 21 in a group. So you see what I'm doing? I'm going to the frame, I'm finding all the hands, then I step through the hands, and then when I have a hand, then I step through all the points, and then I grab the points. Well, right now I'm not grabbing them, but I am just printing them. So what if I want to grab them? Okay, what I would do is when I'm stepping through hand landmarks, okay, when I am stepping through hand landmarks, I'm going to create, this is my hand, and that's just going to be equal to a blank. It's going to be equal to an empty array. So once I'm in here, I have found a hand. So now I create an empty array called my hand. And now I want to append to that. Well, what do I want to append to it? I want to append the individual landmarks, which are here. So what do? I take my hand, and then what do I want to do with it? I want to dot append. And then what do I want to append? I want to append this tuple that I printed, an X comma Y. I want to put that in like that. All right, now I'm going to take this print out. And now after I fall out of this, after I've stepped through all those points, I'm just going to print my hand like that. I'm just going to print my hand like that. And now I should have an array that has XY tuples in it. So let's see if this will work. Okay. So what we're going to do here is see if we can get that down. All right. Call this up, and now let's give it a hand. Boom, look at that. Okay, so do you see what this is? This is an array. You see we're getting an array of tuples, XY points. So this my hands has all the data associated with this hand. Okay, all the data associated with this hand. But now you got to think, okay, so all right, so that's good. That's good. So let's see now if we could do something on our own. I am interested in the tip of my pinky. I am interested in the tip of my pinky. Okay, so what do? I'm going to come in here, and first of all, I'm going to take out using this canned routine of MP draw, because that's cool, but you don't have any control over it. So I get rid of MP draw. And then at this point, I've got this cool array. I got this cool array of my hand. I've got the whole array of my whole hand. Well, what do I want to do? Well, I'm going to do a CV2.circle. CV2.circle. Where do I want to put the circle? On the frame. And then where do I want to put it? The center would be where? Well, I want it at my pinky. Where's your pinky? Your pinky is element number 20. The tip of your pinky is element number 20. So when I come back over here, what would be element number 20? Well, it would be the array my hand, right? This nice huge array down here, it would be my hand. And then which element would it be? It would be element 20, which is my pinky. So I want to put on the frame, and I want to put a circle at the point my hand 20, which should be the tip of my pinky, and then a radius. Well, let's give it a little bit bigger radius. Let's say 25. And then the color, let's make it 255, blue, green, red. Let's make it blue and red, 0,255. So blue and red should make purple if I am thinking right. So that should be purple. And then I am sorry, I'm going to have to make this smaller. Otherwise, that IntelliSense is going to drive us crazy. So now we've got the color, and now we need the thickness. Well, let's make it like a thickness of, let's make it solid, which would be -1, I do believe. So now let's see. If I'm thinking right, we should have the position of the tip of my pinky. What types of crazy mistakes did I make? Now, the fact it didn't crash should not make us necessarily feel good, because we haven't shown it a hand yet, and so nothing could really happen. So let's see. Oh, and we did crash, in fact. Circle overload resolution. Yeah. Okay. So what is the problem? What is the problem? That we are still in this goofy system of having X and Y normalized to 1, that the full frame would be 1. And so we have to unnormalize that. And the way we would unnormalize that, and we should probably go ahead and do it here, where I do the append of landmark X and landmark Y, I should do the conversion there. I need to multiply the X by what? Width. And I need to multiply the Y by what? Height. And now if we did this, it's going to crash because this wants integers. And so I need to make this an int. And then I need to make this an int so that it's round numbers in there. And then let's check our parentheses. This parenthesis closes the append. This parenthesis closes the tuple, and this parenthesis closes the int. And so then I have 1, 2, 3 open. I've got 1, 2, 3 closed. I think that should work. So now let's try that. Okay, so it's waiting for a hand, and now I give it a hand. Boom! Pinky detected. Who's your huckleberry? Look at that. The little pinky is detected. Okay, but now I want you to think something. What if I put another hand in here? What if I put another hand in here? Hey, it did work. Okay, and so for each hand, it finds the pinky. For each hand, it finds the pinky. Look at that. That is pretty darn cool, isn't it? Okay, now I'll show you one other thing that I feel like we should do with the data structure, because it's sort of like analyzed a hand, drew the circle, analyzed a hand, drew the circle. I do feel like that we need one data set that has all the data for both hands. And so I think the way that I would do that is, because I'm trying to make like a little nugget of code that would completely generate a simple to understand, a simple to understand data structure that would allow us to have all the data for all the hands in one place. And so kind of what I would like is, I would like my hands plural, and what that would be is it would be an array of what? An array of hands. This would be the first hand, and this would be the second hand. Okay, so we would have an array that has a first array, which is the first hand, the second array is the second hand. Now, if you only had one hand, it would look like that, and if you had no hands, it would look like that. But you're going to say, let's say that's the first hand, and then that's the second hand, and then you would have inside of that tuples x0, comma, y0, and then comma another tuple, so that would be right that inside your palm joint, and then you would have the x1 comma y1, and that would be the next joint, and then comma, and then dot dot dot, and that was all for this hand. Then you would have the same thing for this hand over here, and so you would have another undo, Control C, okay. You would have over here, inside of this second array, you would have another set of XY points for your other hand. Now, how are we going to do that? Well, after we create my hand here, so the whole my hand here thing is done, after we create the my hand, then what I am going to say is my hands, plural, is going to be equal to I'm going to say my hands dot append, and what do I want to append to it? My hand. So once I create that array for the hand, I append it to the hands plural. And now I've got to set up my hands, and so when you grab a frame, you better go ahead and make that. You better go ahead and make that an empty array. And so every time through, after it looks at the frame, it will give you this data structure. Okay, so now the only thing I'm asking here is that my hand, okay, yeah, I do it after I create my hand as I step through here. And then when I leave the for loop, then I can print my hand singular, or I can append it to my hands plural. And so I'm going to take this print out, and now I'm going to just print here, print my hands. So this time, if I show you both hands, you should get two arrays inside of there, and that might be kind of hard to see. And then I'll just do a print blank line. Okay, so there it's saying nothing. Okay, now I'm getting an array that has one array in it. And if you look at the data scrolling by, you can see that there is one array inside of the array. There is one array inside of the array. Okay, and now with two hands, you can now see that I'm, with two hands, you can see that I'm getting two arrays inside of that array. And both pinkies are detected. Man, is this just me, or is this like something just absolutely super cool? Absolutely super cool. So with this, you can see that you could get any hand, that you could get anything that you wanted. So like I could come up here and I could say, let's do the whole darn pinky. Okay, let's do the whole darn pinky. So let's come over here, and what we would want is 17, 18, 19, 20. We would want 17, 18, 19, 20. So what we're going to do is that is 17, 18, 19, and I already had 20. And so let's make this. Take the 17th point, the 18th point, the 19th point, and the 20th point. Okay. Now that is going to be focused on my pinky. Okay. Boom. Look at that. Look at that beautiful pinky. Okay. I think that's a little bit, maybe when we're doing that many, that's a little bit large. Okay, that's a lot better. And let's see if it'll do. Yeah, we got both hands there working. All right, guys. Oh, let's see. You were not seeing that, were you? Let's come over here. Okay, there it is. And then there it is. And hopefully you were not in the dark for too long, but I'll come back and show you just in case you didn't see the code. So I just took this CV2 circle and I copied it and I pasted it 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I say, okay, take points 17, 18, 19, 20 and draw circles on them because those are the ones associated with my pinky. So I apologize you were in the dark there for just a minute, but that should be pretty clear. So now you could see all of a sudden you think, I could calculate the distance between the two pinkies and I could do something based on that. I could affect things based on what my hands are doing, or I could have something, I could say, what does a thumbs up look like with these points? How would you measure a thumbs up versus a thumbs down? And maybe you could like walk through pictures and you could give the person a thumbs up or thumbs down as you're walking through it, and then you could have a folder of winners and losers or something like that. Okay, you see there's just all types of things that you can do now. All right, but yeah, I could give you a cool homework like that, but I feel like the homework that I should give you is a little bit more practical, that you see that what we have done here is with these simple things, we have busted apart that tough nut of results, and now we've got the actual data that we can use for any point that we're interested in. But this is a little cumbersome to every time start with this program, and it's going to get a little bit confusing. And so what I'm going to suggest is that you create that. This is your homework for next time, and that is that you take this and you create like a class, where you create a class. Or you could create a class, or you could create a function where you pass the function the frame, and then what it returns to you is this simple data structure that I created. And the data structure really should be like this: my hands plural, the array of arrays of hands, and it returns that to you. And then once you have that, then you can go in and you can grab whichever point you want, but you want to unload all of this parsing of the data to either a function or a class. Okay, I will probably do it with a class. Okay, I will probably do it with a class. And so you can do it with a class or you can do it with a function. But get this, where we take all this and we offload it to a helper function. And then as we move forward, we're always just going to use that helper function, and we don't have to worry and sit and stew over these data structures anymore. Does that sound reasonable? Guys, I hope you're having as much fun with this as I am. I really thought that that work last week where we did the OS walk to walk through images, I thought that was really fun. And then I thought this is just really, really super fun. And I start seeing all types of things that we can do using gestures, which I think would be a whole lot of fun. Okay, this has been a long lesson. How many of you guys have made it to the end of the lesson? Okay, how many of you have made it to the end of the lesson? Well, couple of things. First of all, if you are successful on this homework, leave a comment down below. I am legend. And if you're not, leave a comment. I folded up like a cheap lawn chair. That's not the worst outcome. Trying and failing is not nearly as bad as sitting around and watching silly cat videos. And so if you try and fail, that is not really a failure because it's called learning. The bad thing is people who don't try. So don't be embarrassed if you don't get it to work. But let me know how many of you guys were able to get it to work. Plus, you have a bonus just by making it to the end of this video. And so you make it to the end of the video, you can leave the secret word for today, which is gargantuan birds. Okay, these birds, I encountered them unexpectedly this morning. These are monster birds. They're like 3 feet tall, and their beak is like this long. And what they did was they got up on my front porch and they broke 7 windows in my house with those gargantuan noggins. They were using them like hammers, and they were just going along on my veranda, breaking the windows in the house. And we finally got them chased off. They were kind of aggressive. We got them chased off. We kind of got the dogs going after them, and they kind of flew up in a tree. And then we go about our business. They came back and started breaking more windows in the house. And so we have a problem with these gargantuan birds, and I'm not sure what we're going to do with it, because they were just walking around knocking out windows just like their head was a hammer and breaking our windows, and I don't know why. So anyway, the secret word for today is gargantuan bird, and let us know if you were successful in the homework. Hey, if you guys enjoyed this lesson, make sure to give us a thumbs up. That helps us with YouTube. If you have not subscribed to the channel already, make sure to hit that subscribe button. When you do, ring that bell so you will get notification of future lessons. Okay, guys, this has been Paul McWhorter with TopTechBoy.com. I will talk to you guys later.